Hello and welcome to my employment law update for the academic year 2024 to 2025. I have an employment law course that is full of useful videos on my Gumroad site. It's available to law students for about the same price that you'd get for a revision guide, but instead of being a boring revision guide book that just sort of goes through things bit by bit, these are hopefully useful videos that are a little bit more interactive and interesting to listen to, and should cover the whole range of topics that are on an employment law course. Each year I like to give a little bit of an update on what has been going on in employment law in the past 12 months and what we can look forward to in the next 12 months. So with that in mind, let's get started. Now, a lot of the changes in employment law came into force in April 2024. That is normally around the time of year when it happens. It's the beginning of the financial year, so it makes sense for employment law changes to come in at that point when companies know how they will be affected for the forthcoming financial year. So we have the Employment Relations Flexible Working Act from 2023. That came into force. Basically, it allows employees to request from their employer that there is more flexibility in terms of the time when they work and the location where they work as well. Meanwhile, the Protection from Redundancy, Pregnancy and Family Leave Act 2023, as the name suggests, gives more protection to pregnant women during the time of their pregnancy and afterwards, protection from redundancy. Carers Leave Regulations 2024 give people the entitlement to a week off per year to care for someone if they are seriously ill. And that can be taken as a single block of time, or it can be taken as individual days or even half days. Finally, we've got the Paternity Leave Amendment Regulations. And this gives better protection to fathers who maybe their partner has just given birth to a child, or them and their partner have just adopted a child. In the past, it used to be that they would be able to get 1 or 2 weeks off, but that would have to be taken as a single block within the first 15 weeks of the child being born or the adoption going through. Now that period can be taken within the first year, and it doesn't have to be taken as a single block. It can be split up over that year. We've also got new case law. As you know, I cover these on the UK Law Weekly podcast, so if you're interested in finding out more about these, you can go to uklawweekly.com and find out a little bit more about these. Palmer, the first case there, that deals with redundancies, and in particular when a company has to notify the Secretary of State about redundancies. The Independent Workers' Union of Great Britain and Central Arbitration Committee, that's all about the status of delivery drivers and those types of workers. And finally, we've got the Secretary of State for Business and Trade and Mercer, and this case was all about the protections that a worker has if they're disciplined in relation to industrial action. So, of course, the big change this year is that there's been a change in government. The Conservatives were kicked out at the last election and replaced with Keir Starmer, who you see there, and the Labour Party. And unless you're familiar with British politics, you probably might not know that the Labour Party, as the name suggests, are more interested in the rights of workers. That was the reason that the Labour Party was founded. And so we can expect to see a bit more protection for workers compared to protection for employers as we move forward into this new parliament. The Labour Party has promised to put a bill forward concerning employment rights within the first 100 days of being in office, so we can expect to see something relatively soon, but let's think about some of their proposals that have been discussed either in their manifesto or in the press so far. The main thing is about removing the 2-year minimum service requirement for unfair dismissal claims. This has proven a little bit controversial among employers, but at the moment there is that minimum service requirement and Labour simply want to do away with that. Also, this has been making headlines very recently. There's apparently going to be a right to request a 4-day compressed working week, so people will still work the same amount of time over a week, but they can potentially squeeze all of those hours into 4 days and have 1 day off extra per week. Meanwhile, there's also prohibiting the abuse of 0 hours contracts. Again, this is something that's often in the news, quite controversial. We see it in the courts, and Labour want to take action on this subject as well. They also want to repeal the Strikes Act from 2023 and scrap the strike action threshold. There's already been discussion about ignoring this threshold even before legislation is passed to officially scrap it. They also want to end fire and rehire practices. This is where employers may fire someone and then rehire them on terms that are more beneficial for the employer. Obviously, this is quite a bit of a scandal. It's quite a sort of underhanded way for employers to operate. So it would be good to see a crackdown on that. They also want to simplify employment statuses. When you're learning about employment law, one of the things that you'll cover is the difference between employees and workers and people who are self-employed. And Labour want to simplify this so that there's just one status. You're either a worker or you're not. And so that would potentially make things a lot more simpler for people who are doing employment law rather than having to wade through all of that case law, trying to work out if someone is a worker or an employee. I also want to increase the time limit for claims and higher compensation caps. Finally, before I go, one of the things that I always cover in the employment law course is about how to work out things like the sick pay and maternity pay, and these figures change each year, so it's always worth keeping an eye out for the latest figures. Again, these change around April in each year, so if you're doing an exam in May next year, you may want to look at these because they'll probably be updated in line with inflation. But you've got their sick pay at £116.75, national minimum wage at £11.44, and the statutory maternity pay at £184 and 3p. Well, thank you very much for listening to this video and hearing me talk about the employment law updates for this year. I hope you enjoyed it, and remember you can always check out my course on Gumroad. Be a link in the description and you'll find out much more information there. Thanks for watching, see you again soon, bye!